Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is Austin Davidson, and today I'm here alone. I'm going to be bringing you this episode alone because we needed to give John a day off. He's been working hard on both the podcast and his actual job, so he needed a day off when he wakes up early and does these podcasts late. So we're going to continue on without him, but let's get straight into it. Last week we wrapped up our episode a little early without finishing everything, so we're going to go back and just do that quickly for the Steelers vs. Broncos game, and then we'll get into the Chargers vs. Steelers that is happening on Sunday. Anyhow, for Ward section, the Stronger Than Steel player of the week from last week is Juju Smith-Schuster. The man was an absolute monster in this game, obviously having that 97-yard touchdown that ties to the Steelers' longest passing touchdown in history, with himself from last year against the Lions. Overall, though, he had 13 catches for 189 yards, and he was targeted a whopping 17 times. So he is the Stronger Than Steel Player of the Week, but that's not the only award he won. He is also the award winner for the Stronger Than Steel Play of the Game for that said touchdown. The 97-yard touchdown was just so huge and so big. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger throwing that while he's getting hit, and just placing it right where Juju could get it and Juju to come and stiff arm two guys. It had to win the Stronger Than Steel Play of the Game. I mean, in contention was the Boswell to Big Al touchdown. Of course, you always love when your kicker throws a touchdown into your lineman because that doesn't exactly happen and often at all. So it was up there, but just the 97-yard touchdown was just too impressive for that to win. So now winners and losers. I'm going to go over mine quickly. Ryan Switzer was my offensive winner. He's the incentive of donations for every catch obviously helped him as he tied Antonio Brown for the second most yards on the team, behind only Juju Smith-Schuster. That's receiving yards. He actually had the second most yards on the team by himself. For defense, LJ Fort. He tied for the second most tackles on the team in limited playing time with 4, so he's a winner for me. Johns were Chukwuma Okorafor and Javon Hargrave. He thought that Chukwuma Okorafor in his rookie start did pretty good. It wasn't perfect, but he did good enough. And then Javon Hargrave, he said it wasn't great against the run, but he continued as a pass rusher. It's just those are his winners. Now for my losers, I think the big loser in everyone's mind is James Washington, and that's fair criticism. After he was targeted 3 times and came up with 0, and 1 was terrible, he dived when he didn't have to to the point where even if he did catch, and we likely would have been talking about how he should have had a touchdown instead. So it was just a L for him, especially with the penalties, 3 targets, 0 catches, just not good for him. Then my other loser was TJ Watt. I know he came out for some time, but he only had 1 tackle, and that kind of disappointed me, if I'm being honest with you. I wanted more. For John, it was James Conner. It's just, it was the volume, I believe. It just really, he didn't get a lot of running, and it was just when he did run, it wasn't that great. And then his other loser was Bud Dupree. It's just, really, Bud Dupree didn't get the tackles. Bud Dupree didn't do anything. He got 0. Just, he left the game a little bit with an injury, just like TJ Watt, but he still played 41 snaps, and that's what John was trying to echo. So, Bud Dupree and James Conner were his losers. But before we get into the Chargers-Broncos game, let's talk about a little bit of Steelers news. Ola Adeniyi has been activated to the 53-man roster, and controversial to me and John is that the person cut to make room for Adeniyi was Michael Thomas. I'm sorry, not Michael Thomas, Matthew Thomas. Matthew Thomas, the inside linebacker that stood out in preseason as an undrafted free agent, has been cut. Me and John were talking about who to cut when both Eli Rogers and Ola Adeniyi came back, if they made it to the active roster. And Matthew Thomas was not a guy we considered at all. Matthew Thomas was not a guy we thought that they wanted to get rid of. And John theorized that maybe Matthew Thomas did something that made the Steelers organization fall out of favor with him, because obviously he had off-the-field issues. We don't know yet if he's coming back to the practice squad. I think he will be, because obviously he was worth a roster spot for at least this long. So obviously we saw him inactive for the first time last week, and that was strange. So this is something interesting. He might have actually done something that made him fall out of favor with the Steelers, but we'll just have to wait and see with that. I still think it was the wrong move. The possibility could have been that with Cameron Sutton. Let me fast forward to the injury report really quick. To continue talking about Cameron Sutton had a personal problem and he's questionable. And then on the Chargers side, Joe Barksdale was not injury related, and he got downgraded to out. And that's something I was thinking is with Cameron Sutton, possibly maybe he gets downgraded out. Maybe his personal matter gets in the way of his football. Maybe they needed Brian Allen to step up and make the active roster for that game, so he would actually play in place of Cameron Sutton. So you couldn't cut him. Marcus Allen is already slated to actually be active this game in place of Morgan Burnett to play Burnett's role. So, like, you really couldn't have cut those guys. At really least the last guy that me and John talked about was Zach Banner. And, I mean, Marcus Gilbert was expected to practice this week. He didn't. So, like, you really needed to hold on to Zach Banner. It made it really hard. I guess that left Matthew Thomas, where you have L.J. Ford and Tyler Matakevich as servable backups. L.J. Ford especially, who looks good. So I guess they figured, well, we could do without Matthew Thomas in a very healthy position. But that's a bit of Steelers news. Now let's get back to the rest of the injury report. Nose tackle Brandon Mebane, he is out. It was not injury related as well. Running back Melvin Gordon with a knee injury is out. Wide receiver Tyrell Williams with a quad injury is questionable. And as I said, starting offensive tackle Joe Barksdale is out with a personal matter. Now for the Steelers, like I said, Cameron Sutton is questionable with a personal matter. Morgan Burnett is doubtful, likely out. Linebacker Bud Dupree with a pectoral injury is questionable. And then Marcus Gilbert, after not practicing this entire week with the same knee injury, is out. So looking ahead to the all-time series, Pittsburgh leads this series 23-9. It's been very one-sided. The last result was in Week 5, 2015, where the Steelers won versus San Diego 24-20. So the last time they versed, Chargers hadn't even moved yet. The streak is Pittsburgh winning one. That is their latest win and only win since the last time. LA leads the postseason record 2-1. And then the fun fact is that the Chargers have played in Pittsburgh 18 times since they joined the NFL in the merger with the AFL in 1970. The Chargers have won in Pittsburgh just 3 times. Unfortunately, 2 of those wins have come in playoff games. The third was their most recent game in Heinz Field, 34-24 game in 2012. So now let's get into the actual game, and I'm going to start with the offense. It's just coming into this game, the Chargers are actually a sneaky good defense, and no one really talks about them as such. It really is unexpected when looking at their roster. I mean, sure, they had Casey Hayward, Melvin Ingram, and Defensive Rookie of the Year candidate Derwin James. But other than that, they don't really look as talented as they are, at least not for a team that didn't have Joey Bosa up until 2 weeks ago. That's for sure. I genuinely want to go back and watch some more Chargers games to see what is really happening, because I actually feel like these guys shouldn't be this good as the stats say. They're going to be a little bit worse off come Sunday too. They will be without Brandon Mebane, who has the 8th most tackles on the team, and they lost Denzel Perryman 2 weeks ago, who still has the 4th most tackle on the team, even after not playing 2 weeks. Both of those guys were good run-stopping guys, so I think James Conner might go off in this one because that middle looks awfully weak. They are already a worse ranked rush defense than pass defense, ranking 13th in rush defense compared to 8th in pass defense. But with these 2 guys gone, I feel like their rush defense is actually much worse than the stats say now. Now let's talk about the passing game. I'm shocked that the corners after Casey Hayward have stepped up, but they have. Desmond King, Michael Davis, and Trevor Williams have all stepped up to play. And not only that, but they are forcing turnovers too. Between the 3 of them, they have 5 turnovers on the year, and then also they have 2 forced fumbles. So they've done pretty well, which after Verrey got hurt to start the year, I didn't expect them to do well at all. I feel like the main thing has been the safety play. Derwin James is an absolute animal. I still can't believe he fell to the Chargers. He's so talented and leads the Chargers in tackles with 78. And despite being a safety, is second on the team in sacks, with 3.5 on the year. Adai has stepped up and been good too, in my opinion. So really, both safeties are dangerous. So what does this mean for the Steelers' passing game is the question. Well, AB is going to be matched up against Casey Hayward for most of this game, and if I'm being honest with you, if AB isn't double teamed, he's winning that battle, or he should win that battle. I feel like Hayward has actually underperformed a tiny bit this season, definitely in the turnover department where he has 0 interceptions in the year after leading the league in interceptions last year. Now for Juju, I think he should be able to beat whoever he's matched up with, whether it be Desmond King, Michael Davis, or Trevor Williams. But after last game, the Chargers may end up giving him a little bit more respect than the Broncos did after seeing what he can do if you just leave him with one man. That really leads me to talk about Switzer, as I think he's the best option at wide receiver 3. And I actually don't think he will win his matchup. He started to break out last week, but I don't think that trend follows into this week with the Chargers' corners and safeties being so good. We will see, though. He could surprise me. Now I want to talk about the tight ends. And again, I want to stress that up the middle is weak. The short middle, I mean. Mesh routes, curl routes, and even the hook and go could be super effective. I mean, sure, I still think Jatavis Brown has been good, but I just like Vance or even any of the receivers for that matter better. Still, though, I don't really like the matchups anywhere else on the field because, again, I feel like the Chargers' corners and safeties have been really good. Finally, I want to talk about the offensive line. They got a heck of a problem on their hands. Joey Bosa got 2 sacks last week by himself, and he's going to be a pain to contain. Other than him, though, it's going to be about containing Melvin Ingram as well, who leads the team in sacks this year with 5.5. The tackles are going to have to be on their A game, while the interior line has it much easier with the Chargers being down Mebane. And then also, I'm not a fan of Darius Philon, so I feel like Pouncey, Foster, and DeCastro should have good days. Villanueva and Filer should be fine, but they still have challenges in front of them in terms of, compared to the rest of the line at least. But that's all I have to say about offense. Let's get into the defense here. And really, there's no reason to be happy about Melvin Gordon being gone. Austin Eckler is almost as scary in my opinion. And what's scary about Eckler is he's faster, and I'll even go to say is he's a better pass catcher than Melvin Gordon. And we saw his skill showcase the past 2 weeks where he caught 12 of 13 targets and also rushed for an average of 5.8 yards per carry. Austin Eckler actually leads the NFL in yards per touch, too, with 7.48 yards per touch. That's insane. That's scary. You're trying to tell me that that's not as scary as Melvin Gordon, or just almost as scary? That's terrible. But they also used Justin Jackson for 7 carries last week, and on those carries, he went for 57 yards. So don't sleep on the Chargers' run game just because Melvin Gordon is gone. I sure as heck ain't. And I hope the Steelers aren't sleeping on it either, because it's going to be very important to stop those guys. I'm hoping for some big games out of Vince Williams and John Bostic. If they could contain the runs up the middle, that would be huge. What's scary, though, is that forcing the Chargers to pass isn't exactly a good thing. Rivers just set the record for the most consecutive completions in a game and is an MVP candidate for how he's performing. Plus, Rivers has Keenan Allen, who I've always been high on. It's going to be harder for Hayden to keep up with Allen and his speed, but I have high hopes that Hayden has a bounce-back game this week after not having a good week last week. As for the other corner matchups, per usual, I feel like whoever Mike Hilton goes against, he will have the advantage. But for Cody Sensabaugh, I'm worried. Sensabaugh is likely to match up with Travis Benjamin or Tyrell Williams, and that worries me. I feel like they are both better than him, so that's going to be a matchup to watch. I didn't even mention Mike Williams, who is their number 4 wide receiver, the first rounder out of Clemson a year ago, who is also a complete mismatch with his size. It may put a lot of work on the safeties, and supposedly Marcus Allen is supposed to be active this game to play Morgan Burnett's role, so it's going to be interesting to see how he does in his first game active. But really, it's all about Sean Davis and Terrell Edmonds. If Sensabaugh is going to be beat as bad as I think he will this game, Edmonds and Davis are going to have to be on point in coverage. They've been mostly average or bad this year, going from game to game. More average than bad, not that many bad games. But I want to see a game where one of them or both of them are great. And if there's one game to have it, this would be the one. But finally, I want to talk about pass rush. And this is an interesting one. As the Chargers are down starting tackle Barksdale, That's Watt's side, so hopefully he can generate some production after only coming away with 1 tackle last week. Same for Hayward. Should be an easier job going against Sam Tevi. The Sam Tevi's a 6th-round pick from this year, by the way. This is a good game to get to it back for, though, because Okung has been solid on the other side. And this is a pretty hard matchup for both him and Dupree. Still, though, I really hope the injury didn't kill Tuitt's momentum, because before the injury, he was on fire. Then up the middle, this is going to be the first time in 2 games that Hargrave and the inside linebackers don't get to go against a backup somewhere in the interior. And quite honestly, the Chargers' interior O-line has been solid this year. The entire line has only given up 20 sacks in the year, which is tied for 5th in the league. So I don't expect much production from down the middle in this one, at least not what we have seen the past few games. So that wraps up for defense for me. Let's get into special teams. Chargers are one of the few teams below the Steelers in punting, where they rank 29th in yards per punt with 42.9 yards per punt compared to the Steelers' 43.6. Then it only gets worse for the Chargers when you look at net average, where they are at dead last in the NFL with 37.3 net yards per punt compared to the Steelers' 38.8. On punt returning, the Chargers have the slight advantage, where they rank 11th in the league with 9 yards per punt, and compared to the Steelers' 14th ranked 8.5 yards per punt return. To just wrap up the rest of special teams quickly, the Chargers have the advantage on basically everything else, including kickoff returns, kickoff yardage, and then even field goal percentage, believe it or not, even when their kickers have been in and out. They are dead last in PAT percentage, though, so the Steelers have that going for them. But that wraps that section up. Now we're going to do the keys to the game, and I'll let you know John's quickly. John's was to stay committed to the run and to be responsible run defenders. Now, for me, on offense, I agreed with him exactly. It was rush the ball a lot. Last week, the Steelers got away from the run to go to what was working. This week, I think they should do the opposite and just commit to running. I feel like if the Steelers get away from the run, they lose this game. For defense, it's just simply to make the tackle. The Steelers haven't struggled with that all year, and they just need to keep it up. Like, Austin Eckler can't break off a big run or catch a ball that goes forever. Tyrell Williams needs to be tackled before he runs for like a 70-yard touchdown, because he's their speedy wide receiver. Just make the tackle before it gets out of hand. That is my keys to the game. Now, X Factors, John picked Matt Filer and Anthony Chickalo / Olasunkanmi Adeni. He wants them as them both, since they're both going to be rotational guys. For offense for me, I'm going to make my X Factor James Conner, mostly because I believe if the Steelers win or not, the rest on how well he performs. And then defensively, it's Terrell Edmonds. I think if he can have a good day in coverage and be a steady tackler, he could be the difference maker in this one. Now, before we get to our final score prediction, we got to do our weekly pick'em section. At 1 p.m., the Ravens are at the Falcons. The Falcons are favored by 1.5. Me and John both have the Ravens winning. I still can't believe the Falcons get respect. I will trash on the Falcons every time we talk about them, because I still don't understand where all this respect for them comes from. Broncos at Bengals. Bengals are starting Jeff Driscoll. Denver is favored 5.5 points. Me and John are both picking Broncos to cover there. I don't think we have any more faith in the Bengals with Jeff Driscoll as their quarterback and Tom Savage as their backup. Rams at Lions. LA Rams are favored by 10 points, which is a big spread, but me and John still both picked the Rams to cover because we just think that they're a better team. They got to keep Talib back for this game, so I think that that should be enough to let them cover. Cardinals at Packers. Green Bay is getting 13.5, and I'm going to be real with you. Green Bay is trash. Green Bay is not good, and I don't think they're that much better than the Cardinals. So I'm picking the Cardinals plus 13.5. Just FYI, also, the Packers put Mike Daniels on IR, so that's something like one of their only okay defensive players who's actually even having a bad year. So I'm picking the Cardinals plus 13.5. John is picking the Packers to cover. Bills at Dolphins. Miami is favored by 3.5 points. I'm picking the Dolphins to cover. John is picking the Bills to win. So that's that. I don't really have much else to say about that one. Bears at Giants. Chicago is being favored by 3.5, even though they're still starting Chase Daniels because Mitchell Trubisky is not ready. Me and John both agree that the Bears are going to cover this game. the Bears just have such a good defense that it could carry their team even without Mitchell Trubisky. Panthers at Buccaneers. Carolina's being favored by 3 points, and me and John both agree that the Panthers are going to cover. The Buccaneers are a mess. It's just simple as that. Colts at Jaguars. Indianapolis is getting 4 points, and me and John both agree that we think the Colts are going to cover. It looks like Jalen Ramsey is not going to be good to go, but we'll have to see. He might be up, but even then, he's not going to be at full strength, and the Colts are just on fire, and the Jaguars are dumpster fire. So, Colts cover. Browns at Texans. Houston is getting 5.5 points. I'm actually going to pick the Browns to win in an upset game. I don't really have a good reason for it. It's kind of dumb and just asking for me to lose one, but I'm picking the Browns to win. And then John is taking the Texans to cover smartly. 4 p.m. Jets at Titans. Tennessee is being favored by 8 points. I'm picking the Jets +8. I think the Titans are the better team still, but that is such a big gap for that team. Now, John has the Jets winning because the Titans are so inconsistent, so I could honestly see that. I was close to picking that, but I think overall the Titans are still better. Chiefs at Raiders. Kansas City is getting 14 points on the road. Me and Sean both agree that the Chiefs are going to cover. The Raiders are just bad, and they should feel bad. Vikings at Patriots. New England is favored by 5.5 points. I'm picking the Patriots to cover, even though they're not at their strongest. John is picking the Vikings +5.5. He thinks that they're going to finish within 5.5 of the Patriots. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of the Vikings this year. Finally, Redskins at Eagles. Philadelphia is getting 6.5, and I went back and forth in this one. I had originally the Redskins +6.5, but I ultimately went with the Eagles to cover. The Eagles have a lot more to play for. Redskins are kind of a dying horse, so I went with the Eagles to cover here. John went with the Redskins +6.5. And that's understandable because I had that at first. But anyway, that wraps it up. Now, NFL news. We got some spicy news the other day. Just the other day, Kareem Hunt, video of Kareem Hunt got released of him pushing men and women and then kicking down a woman that looked concussed. She looked like she got hurt. Kareem Hunt threw a guy into her. She hit her head on the wall. She was slow to get up, got up, went back down, and then Kareem Hunt kicked her down. And it led to outrage. This event occurred in February of this year, and essentially, apparently, the NFL was not aware of it because the police would not release the tape. So now, the video surfaces thanks to TMZ. TMZ somehow gets it, and there's outcry. And because of the outcry, Kareem Hunt eventually gets cut. And the Chiefs don't cite he got cut for domestic abuse. They cite they cut him because he lied to them. So right now, Kareem Hunt is a free agent on the waivers. And this is after some other NFL news, is that Reuben Foster got cut for another domestic abuse charge. So more men beating women, which is fantastic, of course. You know, it's just so stupid. How do you throw away your career by beating? What? It pisses me off. It pisses me off. I don't understand why these people can't be normal people. Anyway, Reuben Foster was cut by the 49ers and then picked up by the Redskins. Redskins faced backlash after already having... Let's transition to a third NFL news. Is that Adrian Peterson admitted that he still beats his kid, and 9 times out of 10 he doesn't use the switch. But 1 time out of 10 he does. So the Redskins are not doing good right now. The Chiefs look pretty good in terms of public eye because they did it, but I mean, they only cut him because they lied, and because he lied, and you know that that's true because of Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill, before he got drafted by the Chiefs, had domestic abuse called against him too. And you think that the Chiefs are going to cut Tyreek Hill? No. It's also because of different public outcries at the time. Tyreek Hill wasn't an NFL player yet, so it's not like people really knew who he was. They didn't care as much, so he got away with it, and there was no public outcry. But with Kareem Hunt, he just couldn't get he didn't get the same treatment. He is in the NFL. Eyes are on him, and he might have played his last snap in the NFL. We will see. The question becomes, do we think he's going to be picked up by a team? I hope not. I really hope not, because a team probably saw what the Redskins did and when picking up Reuben Foster, and they probably realized they're going to get a lot of backlash for it if they do it. So my guess is I think no. I hope not. But I mean, a lot of people think yes. There was a Twitter poll asking if he would be claimed on waivers, and 72% of people believed yes, he would. And I felt like that was a lot of people believing in that. But that's besides the point. So I'm apparently in the minority for that. But like, it's stupid. He shouldn't be. Maybe he could come back into the NFL in a few years. Because let's be honest, that kick wasn't the worst thing in the world. I think him throwing the guy into her was the bigger thing, because it looked like that concussed her. The kick was very meh. It was like just pushing down. If you guys didn't see the video, but that's what's been like focused on. It's the kick. But anyhow, yeah, really, just don't beat women, people. Don't beat women. And NFL players, you really gotta stop. It's a simple concept. You don't beat women, you make millions of dollars, you profit. There you go. But this might have ended Kareem Hunt's career, and it's terrible because he was a good running back, and he wasted his own career by doing this. So there's that. I hope this wasn't controversial talking about this, but we will proceed as always. Going to the bold predictions now. We're getting back into the game. That's all the NFL news we got. John has Ola Adeniyi getting 2 sacks. Fun fact, he had the 3rd best pass rushing grade of the preseason out of all linebacker. Out of all edge players on every team. So that's something. Then his second one is that Jesse James has 2 touchdowns. For me, I have Terrell Edmonds getting 2 picks. Steelers only getting penalized once this game, and then James Conner going over 250 scrimmage yards. So that leads us to our final score predictions. What do we think is going to happen? The Steelers are favored by 3.5 points. It's a close one. It's supposed to be close. Sunday Night Football, Steelers excel. December football, Steelers excel. John has the Chargers winning 34-29. Which I can understand. The Chargers are a very good team right now. They're very hot. Phillip Rivers, like I said, just set the most consecutive passes in a game without an incompletion, and I think that's a good prediction. So he has the Chargers winning outright. I have the Steelers winning 31-30, and I have the Chargers plus 3.5. I think it's going to be a close game. I do think the Steelers have the edge. I feel like they're going to come out with this, because something that I didn't talk about is that the Chargers, we don't really know what the Chargers are. The Chargers haven't beaten a good team, but they haven't lost to a bad team. Well, that's not true. They lost 2 weeks ago. Oh, I'm forgetting who it is, but regardless, I'll talk about the beginning. They have 3 losses, right? And then 2 of those are from the Rams, and 1 is from the Chiefs. And those are arguably the best teams. Oh, the other team is the Broncos. And the Broncos right now are hot. The Broncos just beat the Chargers and the Steelers. So it's really like an argument of, well, maybe the Broncos are a little better than you thought, because they just beat the Chargers and the Steelers in like back-to-back weeks. But regardless, so now you see that the Chargers haven't they got beaten by 2 good teams and 1 questionable team. Everyone else they beat, though, is not good. They beat up the Bills. They beat up the Chargers barely. Like, they beat the 49ers barely by 2 points. That was after Garoppolo got hurt in that game. Otherwise, they probably would have lost. They beat up on the Raiders, won by 16 points. They destroyed the Browns, won by like 24 points. They just edged out the Titans by 1 point. They beat the Seahawks by 8. They beat the Raiders again by 14. And then they absolutely decimated the Cardinals 45-10. So it's just hard to tell where they're at. Like, they could be a really good team, like just below the Chiefs and the Rams, because they lost there. But they also could just be like a middle of the pack team that could beat up on pretty bad teams. Like, the only teams in here I look at that aren't like necessarily terrible are the Seahawks and the Titans, and they're both what I think of as questionable teams. They're both in the middle. They're just like I don't know what this team is. I don't know that they're not very good, but they're not very bad either. So I don't know. That's something to think about. But that'll conclude today's episode of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. This was season 3, episode 55. I'm sorry, 56. I don't even know what day it is. Thank you for listening. Please check out the links below to check out our YouTube's SoundCloud if you're listening on YouTube if you're listening on SoundCloud, our website, our social media and such. Just check us out, please. We would appreciate any comments and feedback on all of those. You could also email us at the Stronger Than Steel podcast at gmail.com. So feel free to send us an email too. But that wraps up this edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Everybody, have a good night.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.